Our tech team at Singapore American School was invited to a special workshop called Design Thinking in Schools, led by Dr. John Nash and Dr. Beth Rouse, both professors of educational leadership studies at the University of Kentucky. Since 1990, Beth Rouse has been working to design and implement large-scale early care and education programs with a focus on children from vulnerable populations. John Nash is the founding director of the Laboratory on Design Thinking in Education, or D-Lab, which includes courses for teachers, innovation projects with organizations, and empirical work for evidence-based understanding of how design thinking works in education. After registration, dinner, and some networking, Beth and John led a workshop on the application of design thinking in schools and how the method can help support learning and teaching. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to sit down with Beth and John and just talk about their perspectives and opinions on design thinking in education and in schools.
I'm John Nash. I'm an associate professor at the University of Kentucky, and I also direct a small laboratory called the D-Lab. It's the Laboratory for Design Thinking in Education. And I'm interested in the ways in which human-centered design can be used to leverage positive change in schools.
And I'm Beth Rouse. I'm a professor at the University of Kentucky. And I'm very much interested in the design and scaling of programs. And so what are the ways that we can use design thinking, but also systems theory and systems change to figure out how to make things work at a systems level, at the program level, state level, national level.
Design thinking to me is a process by which you can make someone's life better. So I think that's the crux right there. I think design thinking means many things to different people. I think it means understanding the unmet needs of others so that you can create things that make their life better. I think it also means that you're able to understand the world from another's point of view. I think that design thinking means that you're able to empathize and create and iterate solutions that can solve difficult challenges. And so I think those are some of the things that design thinking means to me.
Yeah, it's hard to follow that because it is all that. And I think it's really, for me, as I've learned about it through John, primarily, it's really this thing where you actually get to understand the needs of others and like walking side by side with folks so that you're co-designing and working together towards a solution that works for them. And sometimes it's hard for a perspective of always having been an expert in something to hold back that expertise and really allow yourself to listen and empathize and think with instead of for. So.
I think I might add to that, I think that design thinking democratizes the solution space for the world because it offers a process by which you can lift the voice of the voiceless, the user, usually particularly in schools where you think about the policies and the practices and the ways of working in schools are all promulgated and carried out by a small minority of the human beings who are in the school. And those that are mostly populating the school, students generally have little say in how their lives look or work in schools. And so this is giving us a chance to really let school leaders, educators, students listen to the people who are most affected by the way school work to have a voice in making change in a positive way.
Well, obviously, go through the process like we did this evening, and so they really understand. And I think be open to being creative, and be open to listening to what others want, and being able to set aside I mean, teachers typically are like, my job is to teach. My job is to stand up and provide or facilitate learning and be open to learning from your own children on what they need and what they think would be helpful to them, and giving them voice. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting research projects we've undertaken, and it's one that, in collaboration with Beth, was looking at the ways in which we might consider children who are in transitional kindergarten programs as co-designers of classroom space and curriculum. And so back to my notion of that design thinking offers a way to really open up the space for voices who are not generally at the table around how schools can look, can do that. And so we decided to try to look at ways in which we could take the youngest children who are in programs and understand their unmet needs as best we could. How could we get them to articulate their unmet needs and integrate those in with adults who would then reconsider curriculum and classroom space to benefit those very kids. So the work of that is challenging, and we've collected some data, and we learned a lot about how to understand the needs of others. We looked at, we tried interviewing the children, which was, well, it didn't work. We tried using techniques that we learned from research, working with young children around having the children use images from magazines and others to point at and talk about things that they saw and what they wanted. It mostly did not work for various reasons. But we also used some technology that allowed us to understand where they were moving about the space. I'll let Beth say a little more about how that worked, but also in what they were saying. But ultimately, we used the best proxy we had. Another data point for that was letting the teachers who are with them every day work through an empathy protocol that we had to indicate some of the things that they knew the children liked and didn't like, what some of their latent needs might be, what they've discovered about the children over time, so that we could use that to create personas of the children that could be used in the design process as we thought through what we wanted to do in the classroom. But to the technology, though, there were other ways that we were looking at this.
Yeah, so our population of kids we were interested in while they were very young, we also had children who had disabilities. And so the ability to get at their unmet needs through their own voice was really tough. So we ended up getting really creative and using geomapping chips, basically, on children and on materials, as well as voice recording, so that we could capture both their language as well as their movement and their interaction with different materials. So that allowed us to really see the patterns of movement of kids, what they were saying, who they were talking to, who their friends were, what materials they were interested in, what they weren't using, as a way to help them give input into what the classroom design might look like. So we tried to get really creative in terms of both the protocols that we're using with young kids as well as technology that's available to us to get at unmet needs.
So we might not be able to get their direct voice through an articulated discussion, but our hypothesis is that if we have them wearing a small clip-on device that would map their movements through the room, we start to understand who their friends are, what spaces in the classroom they like to be in, who they don't care to be around, and we can then start to make some insights. Actually, half the design battle is really then coming up with insights that we gain from the data and then making prototype choices that could possibly benefit them.
So here are some of the key points that I found really fascinating in their responses. First, it was interesting that Beth talked about how designers and end users are co-designers, that they walk side by side throughout the whole process. And making sure that even though the designer is seen as the expert, they still need to listen carefully and really have a beginner's mindset. Also, John talks about how design thinking democratizes the what he calls the solution space, allowing end users to have a voice and actually be part of the whole process of developing a solution and bringing positive change. And finally, it was fascinating to hear their research and how they're trying to empathize with pre-kinder students. They weren't able to express themselves verbally, so Beth and John decided to use technology such as geomapping and voice recording to see the patterns of interaction and the use of space, and use that data to actually influence the curriculum that they develop and also the space that students use to learn. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out John and Beth's Twitter accounts to follow the work that they're doing. Also, John is writing a book currently, so make sure you are on the lookout for that. If you are interested in learning more about design thinking and want to learn how to implement design thinking into your classroom, please make sure you check out my book. It's called Design Thinking in the Classroom. The link is in the description below.